Hey guys, I'm Austin from Crazy Good Films, and I've had the good pleasure of seeing Spider-Man Homecoming twice now, and I noticed a bunch of Easter eggs that I thought I'd point out to you guys if you missed them. So the movie starts right off with a construction crew cleaning up rubble and Chitauri weapons in front of the Avengers Tower. This is the setting and an obvious reference to the Battle of New York at the end of the first Avengers movie. In the Vulture's hideout, the man developing the weapons is actually a Spider-Man villain himself, known as the Tinkerer. We could see him pop up again in a sequel. Right after that, when the Marvel logo plays, it's not the traditional Marvel theme song, but instead it's a version of the Spider-Man 60s cartoon theme. Throughout the movie, you see a school news broadcast played in the halls. The girl on the news is actually Betty Brant, a classic Spider-Man love interest in the comics, previously played by Elizabeth Banks in the Sam Raimi films. She also appears in a few scenes talking to Liz. When Peter tries to convince Ned not to tell anyone that he's Spider-Man, he says he can't let Aunt May know after everything she's gone through. This alludes to Uncle Ben's unfortunate death. This is the first Spider-Man movie to never actually mention Uncle Ben. One scene in Peter's history class briefly has a teacher mention the Sokovia Accords. This is a reference to the United Nations deal to crack down on superheroes from Captain America's Civil War. This is a not-so-subtle Easter egg, but one of the Vulture's goons is a comic book villain known as the Shocker. In the movie, he wears the classic red and yellow colors of the character. Another criminal featured in this movie is Aaron Davis, also known as the Prowler, also known as Childish Gambino. In a scene where he talks to Spider-Man, he mentions he has a nephew who lives in Queens. His nephew in the comics is actually Miles Morales, who becomes Spider-Man after Peter Parker dies in the Ultimate Comics universe. There's a scene in Queens where Spider-Man doesn't have big buildings to swing on, so he has to make do with just running. Shortly after, he crashes through a pool party where Ferris Bueller is playing on a TV. The scene shown in Ferris Bueller is Ferris Bueller running just like Spider-Man was in the previous shot. This is not only a joke about the similarities of the two characters, but also a reference to the 80s high school comedies that inspired the tone of Homecoming. There's a scene where Spider-Man is looking through a box at Damage Control's story room where he pulls out one of the heads of the Ultron robots. On the ferry scene, as well as the mid-credit scene, there's a character named Matt Gargan. He has a scorpion tattooed on his neck. This is a reference to his comic book villain, the Scorpion. At Peter's school, his principal is played by Kenneth Choi. Fans might recognize him as Jim Morita, a soldier in Captain America: The First Avenger. It is implied that in this movie, Choi is actually playing a descendant of the soldier, as in his office there is a framed photo of the soldier in black and white. Also, he was credited in the movie as Principal Morita. When Spider-Man is talking to the Vulture, he says selling weapons to criminals is wrong. The Vulture replies that that is how Tony Stark could afford Avengers Tower. This is a reference to Obadiah Stane selling weapons to terrorists in the first Iron Man movie. On the cargo plane the Vulture is robbing, he comes across some of Tony Stark's arc reactors, as well as an Iron Man helmet. The suit that Tony Stark shows off to Peter at the end is the Iron Spider suit from the comic books. Gwyneth Paltrow returns in this movie as Pepper Potts, Tony's longtime girlfriend. Fans may forget, as she hasn't appeared in a movie since Iron Man 3 in 2013. Happy then gives Tony an engagement ring for Pepper and says he's been carrying it around since 2008. This is the year the first Iron Man movie released. This film also has some timeline issues I want to address. The opening scene takes place right after the Battle of New York, which appears in Avengers 1, which was released in 2012. It says 8 years later and transitions to this movie's story. This implies that Homecoming takes place in either 2020 or Avengers took place in 2009, only a year after Tony Stark became Iron Man, as we know from Happy Hogan's 2008 comment. Also, in Homecoming, Happy and Tony are in the middle of moving out of Avengers Tower and into a new facility upstate. The new facility was actually introduced in Avengers Age of Ultron and was seen again in Ant-Man and Civil War. This makes it seem the movie takes place before the move. However, Spider-Man was in Civil War, and that's in the past as far as this movie's concerned. This must mean that their new facility isn't actually that new, and that Tony and Happy are just really late to moving their equipment into the new place. But that's all the Easter eggs that we noticed. If you saw any more, please leave a comment below and let me know. Look forward to a review of the film coming soon.